Passengers notice a great digital experience, but they almost never notice the thousands of decisions that made it possible. Long before a mobile app reaches the App Store or before a single ancillary is sold, airline teams have spent months discussing what to build first, which integrations to prioritize, when to challenge requirements, and how to balance today's priorities with tomorrow's ambitions. Hi, and welcome back to Branchspace's Future Picks, the podcast in which we pick up on and break down innovative technology, trends, and strategies that are transforming the aviation and travel retailing industry. I'm your host, Clarissa Jenkins. Now, back to those decisions. They ultimately determine whether a digital implementation creates lasting commercial impact or simply delivers another piece of software. Luckily, today I'm joined by Branchspace's delivery lead, Robert Lizinovic, as he breaks down the key to delivering valuable digital retailing capabilities, exploring why success is less about executing a project plan and more about becoming a trusted partner, from discovery and MVP definition to integration strategies and continuous optimization. Because let's be honest, the best digital capabilities aren't delivered to airlines. They're built with them. So let's get into it. And without further ado, I'd like to welcome Robert Lizinovic to the Branchspace Future Picks podcast. Thank you so much, Robert, for joining me today. And for those who are a bit unfamiliar, could you go ahead and give us a brief overview of yourself, your career, and more importantly, what brought you to Branchspace and your role here?
As most of the people in my profession, I have engineering background, but quite quickly I turned into more managing projects, managing teams. So most of my career is associated with it. Part of it was also associated with travel industry. So for me, Branchspace is a bit of return to the travel industry after the pandemic, where I had to switch to something else. And I'm happy to be here for almost a year already with good recollection of what travel industry is and how difficult it is compared to other industries.
It's a very, I would say, a bit niche in terms of the practices. I can't believe you've both been here for a year as well. We're very happy about that and all of the things that you have contributed to the Branchspace team. And so with that being said, today we're focusing on delivery for our product Triplake, which is our modular tech agnostic digital retailing suite. And so with that, the first question I have for you is when we start working with a new airline. And so what do you believe are the key steps in that discovery phase? And more importantly, how do you turn those initial requirements into an actual delivery plan that can be followed and managed?
Very important question, especially that the requirements between customers are varying, and it's really difficult to really apply the rule one size fits all. So one of the critical things to be successful in a project is really understand the customer. Understand not only the requirements, but also understand the technical maturity of the customer, also the expectations they are setting on us. Because for some customers, they see us mostly as IT provider or software provider, while for the others, they also expect a bit more, also to use our expertise, to use our experience, and really guide them through the process of improving their digital solutions. So that's the most important, to really understand the customer, understand the needs. We are starting with very rough imagination of requirements, which are known from the level of RFP, from the level of contracting. Next step is to really go into details and understand what is hidden behind those quite often one-liners. But not only this, also how important they are for the customer relatively to each other. So also work on priorities, work on how we structure the project and how we prioritize things. What we do within Branchspace is at the start of each project, we are organizing extensive workshops with the customer to better understand those requirements, to better prioritize them, but also to solutionize and often propose what we have instead of the requirements. So just propose our own solution or propose our own way of solving particular business problem. Based on this, we are creating more detailed plan, which is the basis for mostly the MVP delivery, not the whole project, but to deliver the first important milestone.
Yeah, that most viable product, that MVP aspect. And I'm really glad you said the two elements. One, digging deeper into the requirements beyond those one liners, especially when it comes to integrations or understanding, well, if they want segmentation, well, what does that actually look like? What type of audience are they looking for? And what are their business metrics? And then the second thing was the aspect of work, giving them advice and then mentoring them through and kind of collaborating, not just collaborating with them, but recommending because of our expertise and across the industry and where Branchspace folks have come from. We really are a true partner. We're not just going to deliver a license fee or a SaaS product. We want to make sure that you're cared for, those airlines are cared for at every step of the way. And so that does bring me to my next question, is that you kind of mentioned this a little bit, that governance aspect. So, once we get past that discovery phase, we understand those, key priorities. How do you set governance and collaboration with the customer so that those requirements that you mentioned actually evolve into the final solution or the MVP without drifting too far away on the scope itself?
Yep, also very important question. And we also have our own way of working regarding governing the project. Each project has its own dedicated delivery manager, who is the first point of contact for the customer, but also our, I would say, frontman, frontwoman. So a person who represents Branchspace. These are people with deep understanding of the business, but also experience in dealing with complex program management. And they are the ones who facilitate the whole delivery process. Of course, they are not alone. They are supported by internal teams, by also mixture of individuals and experts on our side, coordinating and collaborating internally. For our
Yeah, you're good.
customers, we approach the projects very individually. So depending on the customer type, we shape also our internal team and structure differently. And usually it's a mixture of dedicated team with more focusing on custom part, so the things which are one-off, which are unique to the customer, and also close collaboration with our product department, where we enhance our basic product functionalities to better suit the customer, but still being generic, still being agnostic, and still being reusable.
Yeah, and very configurable as well. That's really important to note, that we're always looking to enhance, not just or add a new module or things like that, but actually enhance the individual features, because every airline is different, whether it's size or their back end technology they use or their integrations, their partners that they work with. And so I am very curious to learn more about those integrations. Like you said, Triplake is tech agnostic. And so what does that approach look like for the integrations, and how does that actually affect either timelines for implementation or testing, et cetera?
Let me start with something slightly different. First of all, we distinguish 4 levels of adoption of a product. One is when the feature is available out of the box and ready to use. Second level is where we need to configure it, but it's not associated with development. So it's more configuration of the feature to be enabled for a customer. Next level and next way of customizing our software is working through extension points. So the feature in general is working, but for example, requires a bit of functionality to be added on top. In small integrations with proprietary systems are very good examples of it. Fourth level is where we can replace existing feature of a product by something else. And our Service-oriented approach and architecture allows us to replace particular pieces of a software by custom developments done for particular customer, where customization is not the most optimal way to do it. So based on this, we can configure and enhance the product in multiple ways.
That's very interesting. So those 4 points were really amazing. That last point you said, replace and configure for something that's more optimal. Can you give a couple examples? The follow-up question. Give a couple examples. What do you mean by optimal? Like, is that from a money resource perspective or a performance perspective?
It can be various things. Usually it's calculated in terms of the effort associated with adding a configuration layer versus making it really replaceable component. Also, please keep in mind that we have layered architecture of the software. So the connectivity layer is at the bottom. Our software is more a middleware that connects to multiple downstream systems, PSS being the main one, but not the only one. So good separation of layer of connectivity allows us to really think about configurable product, but sometimes as we are not adding a business logic in our middleware layer because it's so trivial, it makes no sense to create this additional layer. When we are creating those replaceable components in places where we do not add any additional orchestration layer by ourselves. One of such elements is, for example, flight status, where we have different vendors with different APIs, and the only thing we are doing is just to map those APIs into our own data model. But our value added is, I would say, minimal behind those mappings. There is no hidden logic behind it.
Yeah, and it's much more, if you were to look at like an architecture diagram, it makes it much easier to understand. I mean, I know you and I have worked on proposals, and we might come across an architecture diagram of what the existing systems look like for an airline, and they have so many layers stacked on top of each other and kind of, what's the word, like wedged or kind of placed the best that they could. And to unravel all of that and to really be able to make it cleaner with Triplake's middleware is a huge benefit. And it doesn't prevent in the future from either the airline or us adding on to it, whether that's a new module, a new partner for ancillary. You always have that availability without having to kind of take apart the house again or the house of cards. And we also see that with the channels. So we have the IBE booking, check-in, self-servicing, payment orchestration, but on the more tangible side, we also have mobile app and web portal or on the go and digital web. So I'm also very curious, I'm sure our listeners are, to understand what does that delivery process look like, you know, delivering for a mobile app versus a web portal in practice, but also what stays consistent across the channels.
To continue the definition of layered architecture, the layering is not visible only on the connectivity side, so only downstream, but also what we are aiming for is to have unified APIs to connect between our business logic or orchestration layer and the front end, so the visual layer. Easier to keep consistency between the web and mobile solutions, not in terms of how visually they look like, but the data they operate on and the behaviors of the system. Of course, we apply the best practices of both web and mobile world to provide the best user experience, but underlying layer is exactly the same. What does it give us? It gives us consistent logic. It gives us ability to maintain single logic irrespective of a digital channel. And it also gives us one more thing. More and more companies are interested in exploring the opportunity to build the applications by themselves or by specialized agency. So something we call headless approach. By having those APIs, we also are able to expose those APIs and enable either our customers or the companies hired by them to build applications on top of our business logic, and also using our orchestration layer as a basis, so ensuring that the application behaves correctly, but also allowing them or enabling them for quicker turnaround of visual aspects of the application. It's important for customers.
So what I'm hearing is one, that control aspect, the customer has a bit more control over what is happening in their application or web portal and being able to change those things either together on both web and mobile app or as individuals. And this also plays out within, our dynamic retailing rules. For those who are not fully aware, does headless apply? Does that type of technology apply to all flows? So the booking, the check-in, is that something that applies overall to, say, the mobile app, or is it best suited for certain aspects or features within the airline's mobile app?
No, those workflows apply to all aspects. So for each, we are able to offer a configurable flow of APIs, which can be utilized by external application.
Okay, that's very good to know. Yeah, I think we see headless come up again, about going back to those proposal requirements, that word come up in my experience during different times with specific areas, whether that's a specific flow. So it's good to know that that applies everywhere. And it allows you, again, to expand and work more fluidly with those APIs, whether that is an internal one or one of a partner, such as an ancillary. And so now I feel like we've covered quite a bit around the project setup, the governance, and the also implementation. But what about when you actually go live? We actually go live with Triplake for an airline. It doesn't just stop there, right? So how do we measure success or support our customer? And most importantly, prioritize those quick wins and optimizations later down the road?
Depending on a customer, we take different approaches because sometimes we are forced for so-called Big Bang approach, meaning going live with everything. And while for the others, we can have more gradual go live with limited functionalities or with a limited scope, either geographically or via different routes. But success measure is always the same. It's satisfaction of the customer. It's the revenue we are getting through our system. Also, from commercial perspective, we are trying to position our software that customer success is our success. So we rely more and more on transactional fees. So it's visible when the customer digital stake grows, also our revenue grows. And that's, I think, the easiest and most visible measure of a success. Second thing is also allowing the customers to experiment, meaning even right after go live, without additional need for development, validate various business scenarios, how a change in UI can influence their conversion rate. But what's more important, the go live is usually a beginning of a road for us. It's not the end. Of course, it's a significant step. The customer starts to use the system. The customer starts to see the results. It's no longer an investment. It's something that provides tangible results, but also usually it raises additional requirements, additional needs from the customer. So we tend to rely, or we try to rely on more long-term relationships with the customer to help them grow their business, but also to utilize our software better.
Yeah, that's a really good point. The experimentation is one of my favorite things about Triplake. It's very fascinating to be able to make those small changes, big or small, but like you said, sometimes the small changes can make a huge difference, whether it's a pop-up fare pop-up, push, nudge, or pre-selecting a seat for you, etc., or just rearranging the pages during a flow. Maybe put your contact information in first and then do look for flights or whatever it may be that the airline is after. I'm really glad you said that because we talk often about those quick wins. Even in the question I just stated, we talk very often about those quick wins, but just because it's a quick win, you see the results quickly doesn't mean that it stops there. We're always looking for those long-term ways to improve, not only for the airline's sake, but for Triplake's sake, because we really collaborate with our customers and build Triplake with them so that it grows along with them in the market. I'd love to hear more, maybe some concrete examples of those quick wins. Could you share a couple of where those delivery choices directly improved commercial outcomes, such as across ancillaries, activation, or even like specific integrations?
Nothing comes directly to my mind because the customers operate on very different markets. One of the things that comes, which is right now more visible, is the work we do with Carrier Connect on check-in, where by adding additional integration to the alliance check-in system, so cross airline check-in system, we enabled the growth of check-ins for one of the customers. Second thing associated with it is that we also enabled quicker integration of other departure control systems. And so for the next customer, it will be much faster, it will be much cheaper to integrate and solve their business problem. Of course, we have multiple cases where we have the same set of ancillaries across various customers. And usually, once we are integrating something for the first time, it takes a bit longer. It requires a bit more effort. But due to the proper productization, each next activation is associated with much smaller cost and much shorter time frame. Sometimes it's even days.
And would you say, going back to guiding a customer, also offering our approach or viewpoint, do you feel, have you ever experienced where you integrate something for an airline and after you've done the integration, you find out or discover that, hey, maybe this wasn't the best, maybe there's a different partner to work with or a different way to go about this integration, and so you're learning along with them as well, even if you didn't propose that way from the beginning?
Yes, multiple ways, and the integration of ancillaries is a good example of it, where we see some commonalities in how they are handled. So right now we are optimizing it not due to the business nature of those ancillaries, but the way they are handled internally to really enable, as a target state, doing it via configuration. Of course, it's not yet there. Still, it requires some development effort, but our target state would be to enable adding new ancillaries only via configuration.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I really think of one of our customers who we've integrated quite a few ancillaries, a significant amount, and even down to working with other governments or other public agencies, such as, their tour board or tourism board that represents that country. I think that's quite significant because then that was a large integration. Like we said, we've never done that before, but it's really paid off in a benefit to be able to offer those passengers more options, packages, and we've noticed differences over time with it as well. So we're always making small tweaks to improve it with every 2-week sprint launch, so to speak.
Yeah, but what you mentioned with this integration with more travel related or stay related activities, so bundles we call stopovers or stop and stay, are quite common across our customer base. So having the proper solution for one of them gives you 80% of having the solution for the next customer. Of course, there are
Exactly.
differences because of different approaches, but in fact, the same concept applies.
Yes, yes, 100%. Okay. I really want to thank you for coming on to the Future Picks. I know this was a bit shorter episode, but I think there was a lot of amazing stuff, insights that our listeners will be very excited to hear. And is there anything else, Robert, that you can think of, when it comes to Triplake and delivery or Branchspace as a whole that you'd like to say before we sign off today?
Nothing comes to my mind. First of all, Clarissa, thank you for inviting me to this episode. And I'll be happy to talk directly with our potential customers or with our customers. So I think this is the message. We are open. We are engaging with the customers directly, and I think that's the power of the branch space here. That we do not try to produce a shelfware, but we are engaging with each customer very directly.
In person, oftentimes as well. And thank you for saying you're always here. I can totally vouch for Robert, everyone. He is super, super sly and almost, I would even argue, maybe a bit of a genius. So if you ever have any questions about Triplake, about integration, if you want to know what integrations we have, could we integrate with your systems, your airline systems, or what your future goals are for integrations and your digital channels, you can find us at branchspace.com. And we can always reach out and we'd love to chat with you in the near future. So thank you so much, Robert, once again for your time today.
Thank you, Clarissa. All my pleasure and ready to do the next step.
Awesome. That's what I like to hear. All right. Cheers, everyone. And thanks again. And we'll see you next time on Branchspace's Future Picks.